Ray Collins, a 38-year-old woman from Jacksonville, Florida, was left heartbroken when her boyfriend broke up with her. She didn't see it coming, and instead of moving on, she became obsessed. For a week, she called and texted him nonstop. She wanted to know what he was doing, where he was, and most importantly, who he was with. She also demanded that he come and pick up his belongings from her house, but he told her to throw them away. That should have been the end of it, but Collins couldn't let go. On February 15th, 2025, her ex-boyfriend had made plans to go out with family. He met up with Latasha Taylor, a 42-year-old married woman, along with some of her relatives at a liquor store before heading to a restaurant in separate cars. What happened next would change everything. As the ex-boyfriend drove through Murray Hill, Collins appeared out of nowhere. When she saw her ex driving another woman around, something inside her snapped. She thought she had caught him moving on. She tailed them, called his phone, texted him, but he ignored her. At a red light, she cut him off, blocking his car with her own. He tried to maneuver around her, but she stayed on his tail. Then, at the next stoplight, she made her move. Collins jumped out of her car, stormed up to her ex's window, and started pounding on it. She was furious. She saw another woman in the passenger seat and immediately assumed the worst. Collins wasn't asking questions. She was seeing red. Inside the car, Latasha Taylor had no idea who Collins was. Confused, she asked Collins, "Who are you?" And that was the moment everything spiraled out of control. Collins had no clue that the woman in the car wasn't her ex's new girlfriend. She was his married cousin. Collins had been stalking, chasing, and confronting the wrong woman. But she didn't stop to think. The ex-boyfriend, sensing danger, grew nervous. Other members of the family, who were in another car, got out to see what was happening. Tensions were boiling over. As Collins raged outside the vehicle, Latasha Taylor, confused and unaware of the situation, made the fatal decision to step out of the car. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was simply trying to defuse the situation. But Collins didn't care. She had already convinced herself that Latasha was the other woman. Fueled by jealousy and blind rage, Collins pulled out a gun. Before anyone could stop her, she pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Latasha in the face, and she collapsed onto the pavement. Screams echoed through the street. Witnesses watched in horror as blood pooled around Latasha's body. Her ex-boyfriend stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Collins, realizing what she had done, sped off, leaving Latasha bleeding out on the cold ground. But the most tragic part? She had just shot an innocent woman. Police arrived to find Latasha bleeding out, fighting for her life. Nearby, officers discovered a .380 caliber shell casing, proof of a crime committed in pure jealousy. Meanwhile, Latasha was rushed to UF Health Shands Hospital in critical condition.
Police say a woman in her early 40s was stopped at a red light at the intersection of McDuff and Post. The person in the car behind her got out and approached the passenger side of the vehicle where the victim was sitting. The woman also got out of her car, and that's when JSO say things escalated.
The victim and suspect both got out. They had a verbal argument, and it appears the suspect brandished a firearm, shot the victim one time in the face. The suspect remained on scene and was detained by officers when they arrived.
JSO also added that this was an isolated incident and there is no further threat to the public.
The husband of a woman shot in the face Saturday night is speaking only to Action News Jax. I'm Tanika Hughes.
I'm Ben Becker. Now, family members confirm the victim is Latasha Taylor. And Action News Jax Shamila Kabir spoke to Taylor's husband, who says he's heartbroken.
She's a great mother, great wife. She usually puts other people before herself.
Tony Taylor says he was getting ready to spend his 15-year anniversary with his wife, Latasha Taylor. But instead, he says his family of 5 is staying 24/7 at UF Health Shands Hospital, praying for a miracle.
She met me when I was going through a tough time in my life to show how much she cares about people. I was at rock bottom when I met her.
Tony Taylor says Latasha was enjoying this past Saturday night with her male cousin. The two were in a car at a red light at an intersection on Post Street in Murray Hill. The suspected shooter was in the car right behind them, he said.
The girl who was following them from where they were coming from got out the car. She already had the gun, so she was prepared to shoot somebody when she showed up.
Tony emphasizes that his wife did not know the shooter.
She was arguing with a male that was in the car. My wife got out to try to defuse the situation and just leave, and that's when the girl shot her.
Officers have detained a suspect, but have not released many details about the shooting. Tony Taylor says Latasha is making progress, but it'll be a rough road to recovery.
She wasn't supposed to make it past Saturday, and she's held on this long.
Collins tried to flee but was quickly arrested. She was charged with attempted second-degree murder and booked into jail with a $250,000 bond.
An arrest report just released today reveals that an arrest has been made in the case where a woman was shot in the face. The shooting happened over the weekend in Murray Hill. According to Jacksonville police, 38-year-old Lortae Collins is now
charged with attempted second-degree murder after the breakup dispute turned violent.
Tony Taylor had been planning to celebrate his 15-year wedding anniversary with Latasha. Instead, he now sits at her hospital bedside, praying she survives. She's a great mother, a great wife. She always puts others before herself. She's always willing to help everybody, Tony said. But instead of celebrating, he and his 3 children are now keeping vigil by her hospital bed, praying for a miracle. This entire situation could have been avoided if Collins had accepted the breakup and moved on. She didn't. Instead, she became obsessed, refusing to accept that her ex-boyfriend had ended things. She called, she texted, she demanded he pick up his things, maybe hoping he'd come back. But when he told her to throw them away, it became clear. He was done, and she couldn't handle it. Her jealousy and rage drove her to track him down, block his car, and confront him in the street. All over a misunderstanding. Because the woman in his passenger seat wasn't his new girlfriend. She was his cousin, a married mother of 5 who had nothing to do with their past relationship. But Collins didn't know that. Blinded by jealousy, heartbreak, and anger, she pulled the trigger, changing multiple lives forever. Now Latasha Taylor fights for her life in a hospital room, while her husband and children pray for her to come home. And Collins? She sits in jail, charged with attempted second-degree murder, facing the reality of her own reckless and unforgivable choices. She thought she could control how the breakup ended, but in the end, all she did was destroy her own life and nearly take another in the process. Let this be a lesson. When someone walks away, let them go. Because when you let jealousy consume you, you could lose everything, and someone else could pay the price.